Welcome to video number 24 in the Using iTrain tutorial series. My name is Bob and we're continuing our understanding of train routes assisted by Ian Morrison. Welcome back. In the last tutorial we completed a repeating loop of the layout using markers, and we highlighted the need for a shunt or mixed type of train route if there was any form of shunting being performed during the route. In this tutorial we'll be completing our train route by including South Platform 2 and 3 and asking iTrain to randomly choose one of these three platforms during each loop of the oval. The manoeuvres that we will perform with the trains may not be prototypical, but within the restrictions of this small test track that we're using here, they will help us to highlight the two main causes of problems when using markers, which are incorrectly defined start markers or finish markers and attempting to use shunts during a marker loop. So let's get started. We'll open the train route by going up to the edit menu and clicking on train routes. I've created a new train route which is a recreation of the route that we used in the last tutorial and called it tutorial 24 this time. And to quickly recap, the route started at South Siding 1 and then moved on to South Platform 1 where it waited to allow passengers to board the train. The next stop was at either North Platform 1 or North Platform 2, chosen at random. Now we know that this stop works perfectly well, so to save us some time we'll remove the chance of a wait here and make it 0%. So now the train will pass straight through either North Platform 1 or 2 without stopping. The route then continues on to South Platform 1 again, and this is the completion of one loop. The loop was defined by these purple markers here. In this first step we set it as the start marker to start the loop, and then in this step here we set it as the finish marker to end the loop. And the number of times that it looped was set by this repeat field here, which is currently set at 2. Now we will set it to 0 this time, so the loop will continue looping round until we end it. And when the loop finishes, it then moves on to the last step in the train route, which is to reverse the train back into South Siding 1. And if we have a train with wagons that needs to be shunted back into the siding, we need to ensure that the shunt option is selected for that particular step, and we make sure that the type of route is either a shunt to make the whole route a shunt, or a mixed route where we can select where the shunting actions will occur. For the new modifications to the route, we just need to add the two platforms into this step. So we just click on it, and then in the lower window this time we select the blocks option, and then we click append twice to add the two platforms, and they've all been chosen in the direction next, which is correct for the platforms that we need to do here. And in the selection at the bottom we click the at random option to make iTrain randomly choose one of these 3 stations each time it goes around the loop. And that is all that we need to do for the modifications. So let's just check the steps to make sure that we are obeying the rules. The loop begins here at this step and ends at that step here. And we need to ensure that the 2 steps are the same. And yes, they're both called SP1, so that appears to be okay. The last step in a loop, this step here, needs to have a 100% weight, and it does, so that's good. And the very last step in the route also needs to have a 100% weight, and it does. So everything looks to be okay. Now, experienced users will be shouting no at the screen right now, but let's continue. We'll click apply to save the route and then close down the window. We will work in offline mode again, and this time we'll use the demo shuttle train DBIC. This train is similar to the British EMUs in that it is an electric powered unit and has a control car at either end of the train, so it's capable of moving in either direction. How can we tell this? Well, we can go to the overview window here, double click on the black dot next to the train, and then we can right click on the DB101 loco here, select the properties, and then here we can see that the loco type is set to electric. And if we right click on the train name itself, we can open up its properties, and in the composition tab we can see that the total length of the train is 130 centimeters, and it consists of the loco DB101, a set of central coaches, and a control car at the other end, which gives it the ability to drive in both directions. So for this train there is no requirement for shunts during the route. I've modified the test layout by increasing the length of the feedbacks and blocks from 50 centimeters to 150 centimeters so that the blocks can accommodate the length of this train. And I've also ensured that each of the blocks have the electrified option ticked. Right click on a block, select the properties, and then in here on the options tab you can see that the electrified option is ticked. And again, every block that the electric train will enter needs to have that option ticked. Okay, we're ready to go, but first we need to make sure that we have the route selected. Tutorial 24. Now, we know that the first 3 steps of this route work okay, going from the south siding to platform 1 and then up to the north platforms. So we can use the power of the offline simulator to just check the 4th step, the step that we modified. So to do that, we can place the train onto the west block and start it from there. We'll click the start button and see which platform iTrain chooses. And it's chosen platform 3. wait for the speed to increase, then we can safely double click the feedback item to allow the train to enter into the block. So the train's moving in. Once it gets into the station, it will then start the wait, and then we have an error. The train has stopped and we have this train cannot continue error here. Right, okay, so I wonder if the same thing happens when we go to the other two platforms. So we'll set the train back onto the west platform here and select set. Now there's a little trick we can use to prevent iTrain using platform 3 again, and that is we press the Alt button and click on the block, and you'll see it has turned grey. So this block is now disabled, and we've limited the choice to the other two platforms that we've yet to test. So we'll click the start button again, and this time it is chosen platform 2. Wait for the speed to increase, double click, allow the train to progress into the route, and when it gets there it should wait for the 1 second, and then we'll see whether we get the error there as well, and yes we do. Okay, so let's check the last option, which is platform 1, and we can do the same trick here again. We can disable platform 2 by selecting Alt and then left clicking so that it goes grey, and press start. Okay, so we're going into platform 1, wait for the speed to increase, double click and wait for the train to go through. So it's entering the block, goes through its wait, and this time it's actually continuing through the route. So let's just progress it through, and of course it will only be able to choose South Platform 1 again, so that looks to be okay for South Platform 1. Let's stop the route and have a little think about what might be happening here. Let's open the route again with Control Shift and F4, and then we'll click on the 4th step to have a closer look at it. Now the error was actually due to us breaking the rule that states whenever we're using markers, the finish marker must be the same as the starter marker. If we look at this upper window, the finish marker is the same as the start marker, isn't it? They're both SP1. But with this step selected, we can see down in the lower window here, this step actually consists of these 3 blocks. And iTrain is randomly going to select one of the 3 blocks that are shown here. So, depending on the choice that iTrain makes, the selection may be SP1 and then SP1 here, which is okay because both steps are exactly the same, or iTrain may choose SP2 and then go to SP1, which is different. The 2 steps would then be different, as would be the case if iTrain chose SP3 and then back to SP1. They would be different too. So that's why we get the error when iTrain chooses either platform 3 or platform 2, but allows the route to continue through, or the loop to continue through, when it chooses platform 1, because in that situation the 2 steps are exactly the same. Now there's various ways that you can avoid the situation. The way that we're going to do it is by ensuring that these two steps are exactly the same. We're going to change this step so that it also chooses between the three different platforms. Even though this means you could still have mismatch markers, for example SP2 and SP3, iTrain treats the group of steps as the same group and therefore accepts them. The modification is very simple. We just click on this step, we choose the blocks choice, and then we click the append to add in SP2 and SP3. We make sure they're all in direction next, and we make sure that the selection is at random. Then click apply to save the route and shut the window. Then we'll shift and click on this block here to close that part of the route down, and then we'll move the train back onto the block and set it there, and click start to start the route. It's chosen to go into South Platform 3, so we will let it go into there, and hopefully this time it will accept it and then route the train down into South Siding, which it has done. So great, that appears to now be working. We'll just see that it completes here, and when it's moved into here it should then route out onto platform 1, and yes, perfect. So that now appears to be okay, and I won't bore you with testing all the rest of the layout. You need to take my word that that is now all working, and we can close the route down. So that was quite an elegant solution for a DMU or EMU or shuttle train that is able to travel in either direction without performing a shunt maneuver. Now let's try it with the steam train, which will require to do a shunt maneuver whenever it goes into platform 2 or 3. It then needs to shunt backwards into South Siding 1. So we'll remove DBIC by shift and clicking on it, and then we'll drag our steam train onto the same position. We'll make sure we're in forward gear and pointing forwards, and then we can start the route. Remember, to begin with, the train is starting in South Siding, and then it has the choice of going to either of these three platforms at random. So let's see what it does. We'll click start, and it's chosen to go to South Platform 3. We'll progress the route in by double clicking. The train is slowly chugging its way out onto South Platform 3. Remember, this block is now 150 centimeters long, so it's going to take a little longer now for it to actually progress all the way into the block before it will stop and then perform the wait. And then, all being well, after the wait is completed, it should shunt back out this way. And what happens is we get this train cannot continue error. Or sometimes the train will just stop and you'll see no error here at all. So what is happening in this situation? Let's open up the train route again and have a look. The route is set as a mixed route, and we set SS1 in this step to a shunt. Just like back in tutorial 23, when we were performing a shunt there with no problem at all. So it should work here, shouldn't it? The difference here compared to tutorial 23 is that we are now trying to perform the shunting maneuver within the two marker loops here. In tutorial 23 we were performing the shunt just in this last step when we had finished the route and we were reversing back into self-siding. So what can we do in this situation? Again, the error occurred whilst we were trying to perform a shunt within the markers. Well, there's three approaches that we could take. Firstly, we could continue to try and find a way to make the shunt work within the markers. iTrain does allow shunts within the markers, but it's not advisable. Every block where the train changes direction needs to have the shunt option ticked, and other complications soon emerge. Each situation will have a different solution, and it often involves a compromise of some sort. For the second approach, we could simply avoid putting the shunt within the markers. And this is often the simplest and most suitable choice, because shunting operations are most likely to be performed at the start or end of a route to either form a new train or to orientate the train correctly. So with a little thought, the manoeuvres can often be moved outside of any marker loops. But there is an even better, exciting third approach, and that is to break the route into smaller routes and connect them together using things called actions and relays. In effect, it is a modular approach to creating routes, which gives us a lot of advantages. We can make routes that are smarter, more flexible, dynamic and intelligent. It allows us to separate the shunting sections so they are easier to deploy. Being intelligent, it means iTrain can test for a condition and then make a decision based on that condition. This makes the routes more dynamic and variable. And by smarter, it means we can reuse existing individual routes to build different routes in modular form. So we save time not having to create a new route each time. Because remember, train routes are not explicitly just for one train. They can be used with multiple trains at the same time or at different times, again saving us time having to recreate routes. But to use this approach, we need to understand actions and relays and how we can use them to stitch the routes together. And of course, that's the subject of a future video. So for now, we will construct our routes so that they avoid using shunts within marker loops and instead move the shunts outside of the markers. We can achieve some fantastic automated running just with train routes like this. And later, if you need to, we can create even more exciting routes by combining them with actions and relays. In the next tutorial, we'll tidy up all the other train route options that we have yet to cover. We'll talk about the role of stations within train routes, and we'll summarize what we've done so far on train routes in the form of a reference table which shows the rules and recommendations when using train routes. So, hope to see you then. Take care.